Have you ever found yourself wondering why certain people consistently disrupt your peace, no matter how hard you try to maintain harmony? Why is it that some individuals seem to drain your energy, leaving you emotionally exhausted? In Stoic philosophy, maintaining inner tranquility is one of the highest virtues, but this becomes difficult when we allow the wrong people into our lives. The people we surround ourselves with have a profound impact on our mental well-being, our actions, and even our perception of the world. Stoicism teaches us that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can certainly control how much space we allow them to occupy in our lives. In Stoicism, the idea of protecting your inner peace is fundamental. As Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic Roman emperor, once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When certain individuals cause emotional chaos, it's a reflection of how much power we've given them over our mental state. But how often do we reflect on who deserves to be close to us? According to Stoic psychology, one of the keys to living a virtuous and peaceful life is to carefully discern whom we let into our inner circle. Stoics believe that relationships should be chosen wisely, prioritizing people who align with our values and support our journey towards self-improvement. It's easy to fall into the trap of trying to fix, tolerate, or even please those who repeatedly harm our mental and emotional balance. Yet, the Stoics remind us that our energy and time are finite. Have you ever considered that intimacy with the wrong people might be blocking you from achieving the calm and clarity you seek? The Stoic philosophy advocates for strong boundaries and encourages us to let go of relationships that do not contribute to our personal growth or well-being. By doing so, we take ownership of our lives, protecting our most valuable resource, our inner peace. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel, and if you like this video, like it and write your opinion through comments. After this introduction, let's move on to the main topic and examine the toxic personalities that you should avoid at all costs. 12 types of people who will ruin your life. Number 1. Blame shifting. Blame shifting is one of the most destructive behaviors that can deeply affect your mental and emotional well-being. Have you ever known someone who never seems to take responsibility for their actions? Instead of owning up to their mistakes, they find a way to make it someone else's fault. This is a classic form of blame shifting, and according to Stoic philosophy, it is a sign of poor character and a lack of self-awareness. When someone constantly shifts blame, they refuse to reflect on their own behavior, leaving you to bear the weight of their irresponsibility. This toxic dynamic can ruin your peace and emotional stability. In psychology, blame shifting is often a defense mechanism, protecting fragile egos from the discomfort of guilt or failure. However, this behavior is harmful not only to the person practicing it, but also to those around them. Stoicism, on the other hand, encourages taking full responsibility for your own actions, no matter the outcome. As Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When someone blames others for their shortcomings, they avoid confronting their own weaknesses, preventing growth and self-improvement. Have you ever considered how exhausting it can be to constantly justify someone else's actions while they refuse to take ownership? Blame-shifting individuals can cause long-term damage in relationships, whether at work, in friendships, or within families. Imagine working on a team where every mistake is pinned on you, even though others share responsibility. Over time, this erodes trust and creates resentment. In personal relationships, it can lead to frustration and feelings of inadequacy. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control, our own actions and responses. When you are surrounded by people who refuse to do the same, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain your inner peace. The solution is clear. Recognize the damage blame shifters can cause and set firm boundaries. You cannot control how others behave, but you can choose how much you allow them to affect you. Stoicism teaches us to let go of the need to fix others and focus on cultivating our own character. Have you ever taken the time to reflect on how much energy you spend trying to defend yourself against someone else's misplaced blame? It's time to reclaim that energy and invest it in your own growth and peace. Number 2. Fear of failure. Fear of failure is another type of mindset that can severely limit your potential, and being close to people who constantly live in this fear can drag you down as well. Stoic philosophy emphasizes embracing challenges and accepting failure as part of life's process. Have you ever found yourself hesitating to take action because someone around you is paralyzed by the fear of what might go wrong? This fear-driven mindset is contagious, and it can stop you from achieving your goals by constantly worrying about the outcome. Psychologically, fear of failure often stems from a fear of judgment or rejection, leading to inaction. When people allow this fear to dominate their decisions, they avoid risks, cling to comfort zones, and stagnate. Stoicism teaches us that failure is not something to be feared, but something to learn from. As Seneca put it, difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. People who live in fear of failure tend to avoid challenges, robbing themselves and those around them of opportunities for growth and resilience. How many times have you held back from pursuing a dream because someone else's fear cast doubt on your path? Being around people who are afraid of failure can make you question your own confidence and ability. Imagine a friend or colleague constantly pointing out what could go wrong, instead of encouraging you to take bold steps forward. This constant fear-based thinking creates an environment of hesitation and second-guessing, which is the opposite of the courage and persistent Stoicism advocates. If you're always surrounded by those who fear failing, you might find yourself internalizing their doubts and limiting your own potential. To counter this, Stoicism advises us to focus on what we can control: our effort and our attitude. Failure is often beyond our control, but how we respond to it is entirely within our grasp. Surround yourself with people who, like the Stoics, see failure as a stepping stone, not an end. Ask yourself, how much have you missed out on because of someone else's fear of failure? It's time to break free from that mindset and embrace failure as a natural and necessary part of growth. Number 3. Self-pity. Self-pity is one of the most draining and unproductive emotional states, and surrounding yourself with people who dwell in it can deeply affect your well-being. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to constantly hear someone complain about their problems without ever taking responsibility or action? These individuals indulge in self-pity, which keeps them trapped in a cycle of negativity. Stoic philosophy teaches us to accept the things we cannot change and to focus on what is within our control. In contrast, people who indulge in self-pity resist this wisdom, choosing instead to wallow in their own misfortunes. This mindset not only limits their growth, but also pulls those around them into their emotional spiral. Psychologically, self-pity is often a defense mechanism to avoid facing the harsh realities of life. While it may bring temporary comfort, it does nothing to solve problems or foster resilience. According to Stoicism, hardship is a part of life, and how we respond to it defines our character. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." People who wallow in self-pity fail to harness this power, instead choosing to see themselves as helpless victims. Have you ever wondered how much of your emotional energy is spent trying to lift up someone who refuses to help themselves? Being close to individuals who constantly feel sorry for themselves can be harmful, as their perspective on life can influence your own. Imagine having a friend who always blames circumstances or other people for their struggles, never taking action to improve their situation. Over time, their defeatist attitude can make you question your own choices, dragging you down into the same negative thought patterns. Stoicism encourages us to rise above adversity, to see challenges as opportunities for growth. Yet, self-pitying people do the opposite. They magnify every setback and cling to it. This not only stifles their own growth, but also clouds the energy and mindset of those around them. To protect your own mental and emotional health, it's crucial to set boundaries with people who indulge in self-pity. You can offer support, but at some point, they must take responsibility for their own actions. Stoic philosophy advises us to focus on what we can control, and that includes the people we choose to keep close. Ask yourself, how many times have you tried to lift someone out of their self-pity only to find yourself emotionally drained in the process? It's time to recognize the power you have over your own mind and walk away from relationships that keep you from progressing toward your own peace and resilience. Number 4. Lack of boundaries. A lack of boundaries is another behavior that can ruin your life, particularly if you allow yourself to become entangled with people who don't respect them. Have you ever been in a situation where someone's demands and needs constantly overwhelm your own, leaving you feeling drained and resentful? People who don't have or respect boundaries often overstep, taking more of your time, energy, and mental space than they should. In Stoic philosophy, maintaining balance and order in one's life is essential, and clear boundaries are a way to protect that balance. Without boundaries, others can easily infringe on your peace of mind, making it harder to focus on your own well-being and personal growth. Psychologically, people who lack boundaries often do so out of insecurity or a need for control. They may feel entitled to constant attention or support, ignoring the fact that others have their own limits and needs. Stoicism teaches that we should live in harmony with others, but not at the cost of our inner tranquility. As Epictetus put it, no man is free who is not master of himself. By setting firm boundaries, we take control of our lives and ensure that we are not overburdened by others' expectations. Have you ever felt guilty for saying no to someone even when you knew it was necessary for your own well-being? Without boundaries, relationships become imbalanced, often leading to resentment and emotional exhaustion. For example, imagine having a colleague who constantly asks for help but never offers it in return, or a friend who demands your time and attention without considering your own needs. Over time, this dynamic wears you down and leaves you feeling taken advantage of. Stoic philosophy teaches that we must guard our time and energy carefully, as these are finite resources. Allowing someone to disregard your boundaries not only undermines your peace, but also distracts you from focusing on what truly matters in your life. To live a life aligned with Stoic principles, it's essential to establish and enforce boundaries with the people around you. This doesn't mean shutting people out, but rather making sure that your relationships are based on mutual respect and understanding. Setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness, but one of self-care. Ask yourself, how much of your energy is being wasted on people who don't respect your limits? It's time to take back control and create the space you need for your own growth, peace, and fulfillment. Number 5. Victim mentality. The victim mentality is one of the most toxic mindsets that can drain both the person who holds it and those around them. Have you ever encountered someone who always seems to believe that the world is against them, regardless of the situation? These individuals see themselves as perpetual victims of circumstances, blaming everything and everyone but themselves for their difficulties. Stoic philosophy teaches us the exact opposite, that while we may not control external events, we have complete control over how we respond to them. As Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Victim mentality, however, denies this power and instead reinforces helplessness. Psychologically, the victim mentality often arises from past trauma or repeated failures, but it becomes harmful when it transforms into a fixed identity. People who constantly see themselves as victims often avoid taking responsibility for their actions, preferring instead to view life through a lens of blame and defeat. In Stoic philosophy, such thinking prevents personal growth and resilience. Rather than embracing life's challenges as opportunities to grow stronger, those with a victim mentality stay stuck in self-pity. Have you ever considered how much energy you waste sympathizing with someone who refuses to change their perspective or take action? When you allow yourself to be close to people who have a victim mentality, their constant negativity can seep into your own outlook on life. Imagine working with a colleague who constantly complains about how unfair their workload is, or having a friend who always blames others for their problems without ever taking steps to improve their situation. Over time, this attitude can influence your own sense of empowerment, making it harder for you to approach life with the Stoic belief that you are responsible for your own happiness. Victim mentality turns obstacles into insurmountable barriers, rather than challenges to be overcome. The Stoic solution is to focus on what you can control and to surround yourself with people who also embrace this mindset. We cannot control every event, but we can control our response to it. Ask yourself, how often do you let the negativity of others, rooted in their victim mentality, affect your own ability to take charge of your life? It's time to distance yourself from people who refuse to acknowledge their own agency and to focus instead on relationships that inspire resilience, strength, and responsibility. Number 6. Materialism. Materialism is another dangerous mindset that can slowly ruin your life, especially if you are surrounded by people who constantly prioritize wealth and possessions over inner values. Have you ever noticed how the relentless pursuit of material things rarely leads to lasting happiness? People consumed by materialism often believe that external possessions, fancy cars, big houses, or the latest gadgets are the key to fulfillment. However, Stoic philosophy teaches us that true contentment comes from within, not from external objects. As Seneca wisely said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Materialism traps people in a never-ending cycle of desire, always wanting more and never feeling satisfied. From a psychological perspective, materialism is closely linked to feelings of inadequacy and a lack of self-worth. People who rely on material possessions to feel good about themselves often do so because they are compensating for inner emptiness. While buying something new might bring a temporary sense of joy, it quickly fades, leading to the need for the next purchase. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what is essential virtue, wisdom, and inner peace, rather than being distracted by the temporary allure of material goods. Have you ever paused to ask yourself if the things you own are bringing you genuine happiness or just momentary pleasure? Being close to people who are overly materialistic can cloud your judgment and shift your priorities. Imagine having friends who constantly pressure you to buy things you don't need or who measure your worth by what you own rather than who you are. Over time, this influence can pull you away from what truly matters, making you focus on material success rather than personal growth. Stoicism reminds us that happiness is not found in things, but in our ability to live in harmony with nature, accept what we have, and pursue wisdom. Materialism does the opposite. It distracts us from our inner development by making us chase after external validations. To align with Stoic principles, it's essential to distance yourself from people who prioritize material possessions over personal virtues. Focus on surrounding yourself with individuals who value character, wisdom, and self-control over wealth and status. Ask yourself, how much of your time and energy is spent trying to keep up with material expectations set by others? It's time to shift your focus inward and cultivate relationships that support a life of simplicity, gratitude, and inner fulfillment rather than one driven by material desires. Number 7. Superficiality. Superficiality is a destructive trait in relationships, and it's easy to be drawn into the company of people who value appearances over substance. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it can be to maintain connections with individuals who are more concerned with how things look than with genuine character and values? These people often focus on external markers like beauty, status, or wealth, rather than inner qualities like kindness, wisdom, or integrity. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus on what truly matters: our character, actions, and inner peace, rather than being consumed by surface-level concerns. As Seneca said, "Wealth is the slave of a wise man, the master of a fool." Superficial people often chase after fleeting things, leaving no room for deeper growth or meaningful connection. Psychologically, superficiality can stem from insecurity or a fear of vulnerability. People who are fixated on outward appearances may avoid introspection because they are afraid to confront their deeper selves. This creates shallow relationships that lack true emotional depth or connection. Stoicism emphasizes the importance of self-awareness and honesty, reminding us to look inward rather than outward for validation. Have you ever wondered how much of your energy is spent trying to impress or keep up with someone who only values you for external traits? Superficiality forces you to chase illusions, distancing you from authentic fulfillment. When you surround yourself with superficial people, you might find yourself prioritizing the wrong things. For example, imagine having a friend who is only interested in showing off their latest purchases or achievements, never bothering to ask how you're really doing. This kind of dynamic shifts your focus away from personal growth and onto appearances. Stoicism encourages us to build relationships based on virtue, shared values, and depth of character. In contrast, superficiality keeps you trapped in a cycle of shallow interactions, never allowing you to experience the meaningful connections that bring true fulfillment. To protect your peace and live in alignment with Stoic principles, it's important to distance yourself from those who prioritize superficial things. Instead, seek out relationships that are built on mutual respect, integrity, and authenticity. Ask yourself, how much time have you wasted trying to meet superficial standards set by others, instead of cultivating your own inner virtues? It's time to focus on what truly matters, building meaningful relationships that enrich your life rather than those that demand you sacrifice depth for appearances. Number 8. Overanalyzing. Overanalyzing is another harmful trait that can ruin your life, especially when you are surrounded by people who constantly second-guess and overthink every situation. Have you ever been in the company of someone who overanalyzes everything to the point of paralysis? These individuals tend to break down even the simplest decisions, creating unnecessary stress and confusion. Stoic philosophy teaches us to act with clarity and decisiveness, focusing on what is within our control while letting go of needless worries. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Overanalyzing, however, turns small concerns into overwhelming obstacles, preventing clear action. Psychologically, overanalyzing often stems from anxiety and a fear of making the wrong choice. People who overthink every situation are often afraid of uncertainty, and in their attempts to plan for every possible outcome, they create mental chaos. Stoicism, on the other hand, encourages us to embrace the unpredictability of life and to focus on making the best decisions we can with the information we have. Overanalyzing robs us of this stoic calm, replacing it with endless worry. Have you ever considered how much time you spend analyzing problems that never come to pass, only to find that your overthinking has paralyzed you into inaction? Being around people who overanalyze can be frustrating and contagious. Imagine working with a colleague who questions every detail of a project, delaying decisions and creating unnecessary stress. Over time, their habit of overanalyzing can influence your own mindset, making you more hesitant and doubtful. Stoic philosophy reminds us that we cannot control everything, and trying to do so only leads to frustration. Instead of endlessly dissecting every possibility, Stoicism teaches us to act, accept the outcome, and adapt if necessary. Overanalyzing distracts us from this process, keeping us stuck in a cycle of indecision and doubt. To break free from the cycle of overanalyzing, it's important to adopt a Stoic approach by focusing on what you can control and letting go of the rest. Surround yourself with people who take action and are comfortable with uncertainty. Ask yourself, how often do you overthink a situation, only to realize later that your excessive analysis brought you no closer to a solution? It's time to embrace the Stoic mindset of simplicity and decisiveness, freeing yourself from the mental clutter that overanalyzing creates. Number 9. Emotional volatility. Emotional volatility refers to the constant shifts in mood that can make a person unpredictable and difficult to be around. Have you ever felt exhausted by someone who switches from happiness to anger or sadness without warning? Emotional volatility disrupts not only the person experiencing it, but also those in their environment. Stoic philosophy teaches us the importance of emotional stability and self-control. According to the Stoics, it is essential to maintain an inner calm, regardless of external circumstances. As Epictetus emphasized, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. People who are emotionally volatile lack this control, allowing their feelings to dictate their actions, which can lead to chaotic relationships. From a psychological standpoint, emotional volatility often stems from unresolved inner turmoil or stress. People who struggle with regulating their emotions are usually reacting to deep-seated insecurities, fears, or past traumas. While this may evoke sympathy, it becomes problematic when their mood swings consistently affect those around them. Stoic philosophy encourages us to manage our emotions with reason and clarity. Marcus Aurelius advised, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Emotional volatility, however, reflects a lack of this inner strength, causing harm to the volatile person and those close to them. Being around emotionally volatile people can be draining and stressful, as their unpredictable behavior creates a constant sense of unease. Imagine having a friend or partner who explodes in anger over minor inconveniences or becomes deeply despondent over trivial matters. This type of behavior disrupts harmony and makes it difficult to maintain a stable relationship. Stoicism teaches us to seek tranquility and balance in our interactions with others, but emotional volatility stands in direct opposition to this ideal. Have you ever found yourself walking on eggshells around someone, trying to avoid triggering their next emotional outburst? Over time, this behavior can erode your own sense of peace. To protect your emotional well-being, it is essential to distance yourself from people who display excessive emotional volatility. While offering support is important, it is also crucial to recognize when someone's instability is taking a toll on your mental health. The Stoic approach is to focus on what you can control: your own reactions and choices. You cannot control another person's emotions, but you can choose how much space you allow them to occupy in your life. Ask yourself, how much of your own tranquility are you sacrificing by being around people who are emotionally volatile? It's time to prioritize your own emotional balance and let go of relationships that threaten it. Number 10. Blaming the world. Blaming the world is another self-destructive mindset that can ruin not only the person holding it, but also those close to them. Have you ever encountered someone who constantly complains that life is unfair, blaming external circumstances for all their problems? These individuals refuse to take responsibility for their actions and instead point the finger at everything but themselves. Stoic philosophy directly opposes this attitude, teaching us that we should focus on what we can control: our own thoughts, decisions, and reaction. As Epictetus said, we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them. People who blame the world waste their energy on things they cannot change, leaving little room for personal growth. Psychologically, blaming the world is often a defense mechanism to avoid feelings of guilt, shame, or failure. It's easier to say "it's not my fault" than to reflect on one's role in a difficult situation. This mentality not only stifles self-awareness but also creates a victim mindset that is hard to escape. Stoicism, however, teaches that true power comes from within. The Stoics believe that by focusing on our own actions and responses, we free ourselves from the frustration of blaming external factors. Have you ever considered how often people who blame the world for their problems remain stuck in the same cycles of frustration and disappointment? Surrounding yourself with people who constantly blame the world can have a detrimental impact on your own mindset. Imagine being close to someone who always attributes their failures to bad luck, poor timing, or unfair systems, never reflecting on how they might improve or adapt. Over time, this attitude can influence you to adopt a similarly negative worldview. Stoicism teaches us to take full responsibility for our lives, to view challenges as opportunities for growth rather than as obstacles imposed by an unjust world. Blaming the world prevents this perspective, turning every difficulty into an excuse for inaction. To lead a fulfilling and resilient life, it's important to avoid those who constantly blame external factors for their problems. Stoic philosophy reminds us that while we cannot control everything that happens to us, we can control how we respond. Ask yourself, how often do you allow other people's complaints and excuses to cloud your own perspective on life? It's time to step away from relationships that encourage blaming the world and embrace the Stoic mindset of responsibility, action, and self-control. By doing so, you can create a more empowered and resilient approach to life's challenges. Number 11. False pride. False pride is a dangerous trait that can ruin relationships and distort one's sense of self. It occurs when individuals inflate their self-worth based on superficial achievements, social status, or other external factors. Have you ever encountered someone who constantly boasts about their accomplishments, seeking validation from others rather than focusing on genuine personal growth? False pride is often rooted in insecurity, and it compels people to focus on appearances rather than substance. Stoic philosophy teaches that true pride comes from within, through the cultivation of virtue and wisdom. As Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." Those consumed by false pride fail to understand that true self-worth is not tied to external validation. From a psychological perspective, false pride can be a defense mechanism used to mask feelings of inadequacy. People who are overly prideful may avoid reflecting on their flaws and weaknesses, choosing instead to build an inflated image of themselves to hide their vulnerabilities. This attitude not only limits personal growth, but also alienates others, as it creates a barrier to authentic connection. Stoic philosophy, by contrast, encourages humility and self-reflection. The Stoics believed that arrogance is a sign of weakness, not strength, as it blinds people to the importance of constant self-improvement. Have you ever wondered how much energy is wasted in maintaining a facade of pride rather than embracing true personal development? When we surround ourselves with individuals who are ruled by false pride, it can affect our own sense of self. Imagine working with someone who takes credit for team efforts or refuses to acknowledge their mistakes. This can create an environment of competition rather than collaboration, pushing others to similarly inflate their own achievements just to keep up. Stoicism emphasizes the importance of community and shared values, reminding us that personal growth is not a competition but a lifelong journey toward wisdom. False pride disrupts this, fostering division rather than unity. To avoid the pitfalls of false pride, it's essential to focus on cultivating inner virtues rather than chasing external recognition. People who seek validation through superficial means are missing the core lesson of Stoicism, that true happiness comes from living in accordance with nature and accepting one's limitations. Ask yourself, how often do you seek approval from others rather than focusing on your own sense of purpose? The key to avoiding false pride lies in practicing humility, self-awareness, and embracing the Stoic principle that personal growth is a quiet, inward process. Number 12. Uncontrolled Desires. Uncontrolled desires are another toxic trait that can derail one's life and the lives of those around them. People who are driven by insatiable wants often chase after material goods, status, or fleeting pleasures, never finding true contentment. Have you ever known someone whose entire focus is on acquiring more, whether it's wealth, power, or recognition, yet they seem perpetually dissatisfied? Stoicism teaches that happiness comes from controlling our desires, not indulging them. As Epictetus wisely remarked, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Those consumed by uncontrolled desires are always reaching for something external, leaving them empty and disconnected from their true selves. Psychologically, uncontrolled desires are often a symptom of deeper emotional issues, such as insecurity or a fear of inadequacy. When people place their sense of fulfillment in external things, they are constantly at the mercy of circumstances beyond their control. This leads to frustration, anxiety, and a never-ending pursuit of more. Stoicism teaches the opposite. True peace comes from understanding that our happiness lies within, not in external possessions or achievements. Have you ever questioned whether the pursuit of your desires is actually bringing you closer to fulfillment? Or is it simply feeding a cycle of craving and disappointment? Being around people who are driven by uncontrolled desires can also negatively impact your own mindset. Imagine having a friend who is constantly chasing after the latest gadgets, promotions, or social status, never content with what they have. Over time, their relentless pursuit of more can influence you to question your own life and push you into a similar cycle of dissatisfaction. Stoic philosophy emphasizes the importance of moderation and contentment with what you have. Marcus Aurelius said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself in your way of thinking." Uncontrolled desires cloud this truth, making it difficult to appreciate the present moment. To break free from the trap of uncontrolled desires, Stoicism teaches us to cultivate gratitude for what we already have and to focus on the things we can control. Ask yourself, are your desires guiding you toward a more meaningful life, or are they pulling you away from it? By practicing restraint and focusing on inner virtues rather than external gains, you can find lasting peace and avoid the frustration that comes from chasing desires that will never fully satisfy. Embracing Stoic wisdom helps ground you in the present, freeing you from the endless cycle of craving. I hope these Stoic teachings are useful and effective for you. My goal is to make your life better and more enjoyable. I will accompany you in this interesting and meaningful magazine.